Today's edition of MacVoices is supported by MacPaw, the maker of Clean My Mac X. Visit macpaw.com/podcast to download your copy and use the code MacVoices to save 5%. Welcome to MacVoices. This is the talk of the Apple community, and I'm Chuck Joyner. This is the second in our two-part conversation with Barry Fulk, Mark Fuccio, and Mike Rose about some of the changes that lockdown has brought to business and what we think some of the trends may be going forward as some of those changes become potentially a little more permanent. In the first part, we talked about some of the obvious ones, like working from home, video conferencing, that kind of thing. Now we get into a little more depth about some of the deeper things from a business standpoint and a consumer standpoint, and how the expectations probably will be changing for good. Here we go. And I feel like, boy, I'm going to get in trouble for this, but I think a lot of the resistance to some of these technologies has come from people that are age X and older. And I'm not going to give you an X because I think it kind of depends on the industry and it depends on the person. But as a general rule, age X and older says, yeah, you know what? Why don't you do that after I retire? You know, in a year, 2 years, 3 years, 5 years. But it's working fine right now. And the companies that have done that, I think, have gotten caught a bit with their pants down, because the younger people are much more used to the technology and much more used to this way of doing business. And so part of what I think you're saying is absolutely true. And you're right, you know, call a service and they can have you an account up and running this afternoon. Now, the training on that system may be a little bit different, but you know, you can implement things so much faster and so much easier in this environment.
Yeah, and I think too, when you sort of highlight the digital divide, it's not just when you have employees or leaders or folks who are responsible for those processes who are on the far side of the digital divide at your company. It's maybe your customers who are older or who have a specific expectation of how they're going to do business, and they have been part of the reason that you haven't changed things. Maybe you had a small number of customers that you served digitally because that's what they wanted, but most of your customers were, you know, emailing Excel files or signing on paper because that was the expectation in your world. And so it's not just changing what we do from the inside of the corporate experience. It's changing what those customer facing expectations are. Sometimes it was just, you know, it was just fear. It's just like, oh, well, if we change this, our customers are going to run away. You never tried. Like you didn't know that they were going to run away, or you didn't know that they were going to react badly. You made an assumption that they were going to react badly, and you never tried to move them. And now that you've had to, you discovered, oh, they stuck with you because they understand. They understand what's going on.
That is such an excellent point.
Or they tell you, why the hell did it take so long? We've been waiting for you to change.
That's right, exactly. We've been trying to have this conversation for years. And yeah. And it's interesting in you know, you have companies that are really struggling and that are facing existential sort of crises. You have companies that are sort of, you know, status quo. They have to move many of their processes to digital, but their world in terms of customer volume and how busy they are isn't really changing. And then you have those companies that are like hitting a 5x, 10x, 20x multiplier in how busy they are. And it's mostly those companies who are saying, wow, you know, we didn't even think about the number of manual processes that we were dealing with because we didn't have to. We weren't so busy, where we didn't have the volume, the transactional volume or the throughput that demanded that we streamline this, that demanded that we optimize. And now they're the ones who are saying, wow, success is killing us. And we have to figure out a way to do this that's not going to make us lose our minds.
Yeah, well, I think this is more broadly fits into you know, a theme of what leads, you know, a company to change how it does things. And most times, it's been my experience, it's when it's the country is in a recession or the industry is in a recession or a slowdown, because that's when they have time, they can try something different. Absent that, you know, it's how do you tell how do you answer the question, you know, to maybe crusty senior management who's saying, well, everything's doing so well. Why should we take the risk of changing and not doing what we're doing now? Let's just grow. Let's invest more in what we're doing. We know it works. So you need these sort of punctuation or pause periods. And unfortunately, most of them are exogenous. It's recession caused by Gulf War invasions or things like that. Or now it's a recession caused by the SARS-CoV-2 pandemic. But to quote Mike's governor, in his daily sermonizing, he says, we need to build back better. And just I think Andrew Cuomo is famous for it. The feds have to pay for it, and build back better. He's got a couple other of his daily comments that I think have entered the lexicon.
You forgot New York tough. That's what
New York tough, yes. And wear a mask. Yeah, but anyway, but I want to shift a little bit because apart from just how corporations are doing business, I think that we've seen a dramatic uptick just in digital commerce and share of again from this webinar earlier today that April year to year, retail sales in 2020 are 24% of all retail dollars, excluding autos. So that's up from 16% a year ago. So that's 50% growth. That's enormous in terms of its impact. So what do you guys think of that?
Barry, take it.
Yeah, I was going to say, we're leveraging it both for work and, of course, personally, where, I just go to Amazon or I go to wherever to order. And it's pretty much natural for me just to go there first because it's so easy. But I also am impressed, and I think companies like Apple have taken advantage of it and said, okay, we're going to release a new iPhone, the SE, the new version. Now, I was surprised. If you would have asked me earlier in the year, were they going to release them? I'm like, oh no, they'll probably just hold off. And of course, it was just a rumor at that point. Yet they delivered new iPads, right? And I couldn't wait to get my hands on it. And also partially because, well, I love new technology, but also I'm always looking at the lens of how can I make my teams and my company more productive. And so when these opportunities do present themselves, I'm like, okay, we're all at home. Again, it goes back to, I'm going to try testing things out, roll this out to a small pilot group of people, collect their feedback. Overwhelmingly, they're like, well, this is way better, especially I'm going to specifically talk about the iPad with the trackpad keyboard, but these are traditional laptop or desktop users. They're like, yeah, this is great. I collapse it, I bring it wherever. And the joke is, oh, I'm working all the time now. Well, yes, but they're enjoying the experience more. It is new, but it also gives them more thoughts about how they can expand that down the road, continue down that path. Other things that we've done from an e-commerce perspective, like Mark, what you're saying is enabling people to make purchases. And Mike, I think you said you had a per diem of like $250. We kind of do a similar thing where it's like, okay, as long as it's reasonable, you need a second monitor. Yeah, absolutely. Everybody's got two monitors at the office, but at home, they're locking out their laptop screen. That was a huge productivity killer. I'm like, you get a decent 24-inch monitor for like $100 practically. Don't even waste my time or your boss's time. Just get it. And so I think we pushed a lot of that traffic out there. And it wasn't just Amazon. It was other computer retailers. And obviously, we have relationships with certain companies that we leverage. So I think that definitely was a swelling that you'll see there. And I think that'll probably stay pretty high. Plus, people couldn't go out, so have it brought to your door.
Yeah. Which brings something that I wanted to mention, that Amazon was the 400-pound gorilla, and I'm not sure it's not the 800-pound gorilla now, because they have the infrastructure, they have the selection, but almost more importantly for me, Mike used the phrase friction earlier, and Amazon takes the friction out of a purchase, and even better, they take friction out of returns, so that I can either go to at least for me, and I'm sure this is true for a lot of people, not everyone. I can select to go to a UPS store or to a Kohl's, and just drop it off. And when I say drop it off, I mean literally just drop the product off. I don't have to address the box. I don't have to tape the box. I don't have to give them a box. I just take the product back in. Amazon has sent me a code on my phone. They scan it, hand me a receipt, and I walk out. As opposed to some other retailers where, oh, okay, this isn't quite right, or this isn't what I expected. So I've got to go through all those processes. Then I've got to go find somewhere, maybe it's UPS, maybe it's somewhere else, that I can drop the package off to send back. And so as a result, I know my buying habits have changed because there are times I would do business with some other companies, but Amazon, I may have to return this. And if I do, I'm going to go to Amazon because it's so easy.
Well, I forget if it was Mike. Yeah, I forget if it was Mike or Barry or both of them used the word friction. Amazon has been so great at that. They make it very easy, to buy stuff, to return stuff, to pay for stuff. They've really done. They've done a lot of hard work, and they're now reaping some of the benefits of that. But also, it sets higher expectations for everybody else in the field and helps them up their game too. So. I know that there's some stores that their apps, they will tell you if this thing is in stock. Sort of, we had an interesting thing in start of March, sort of remote control buying, going out trying to get supplies for this is before my wife and I were suspecting that this COVID thing was going to become more serious. We were out and about shopping for cold medicines or
toilet paper
and other things. And
Yeah.
Tylenol, toilet paper, guns, bullets, whiskey, the usual.
Bandages. Dog
I want to know
collars,
I want to know what the prioritization there was.
But okay, but back to the app is tell you, okay, well, this Walgreens at this store has it, and it's on this aisle, and it's just an enormous. I'm mixing some of the apps together, but some of the stores, but what they've done to integrate power of good inventory control and good cloud technology with physical locales, it's really changed and made a much better shopping experience. So and I think this is part of this other trend of just people want stuff and they want it now. I mean, Netflix is all about time shifting stuff when you want to see it, and that's podcast listeners. You all know it's all about listening to stuff when you want to consume it. That's part of these ongoing trends, and I think we're going to see similar things with e-commerce, and Shopify is emerging as sort of a competitor to Amazon on the logistics side, because instead of putting in Amazon with their A to Z arrow on every box, Shopify will white label it. So I think that's just part of a continuing ongoing trend. It's going to rip up stores and kill malls, and change like that is just a horrible thing. But I feel for them like I'm sure I would have felt for buggy whip makers going out of business. It's just the commercial landscape changes.
Mike, you're in New York City. I mean,
yes.
You have to have a little bit different perspective on this than probably the rest of us.
Well, in terms of how retail or the delivery and the e-commerce business has changed, I think actually, one of the things that New York, like Chicago or San Francisco or other cities, has in its favor is the density that allows these vendors to build warehouse capacity, to build delivery capacity. That doesn't work quite as well in suburban or rural settings. So, I mean, the first thing I want to say about this is, number one, these companies like Instacart or Amazon or really anyone else in the home delivery space that got overwhelmed in March did really step up. I mean, their employees have been working incredibly hard, and in fact, particularly in New York, the presence and the plausible availability of a lot of these home delivery services is what has made it possible for us to actually flatten the curve and reduce the infection rate. So if not for these services, we would have had a much harder time helping people stay home when they could. So I think we owe them some gratitude. I think the interesting thing that we found is that grocery delivery, like the essentials, the further down you go in Maslow's pyramid of hierarchy of needs, the closer you got to sort of the toilet paper and tuna fish floor, the harder it was to ensure that you were going to get the stuff you needed when you needed it. And those deliveries, those delivery slots were very, very hard to come by. I had colleagues who were setting their alarms for 3 a.m. in Boston or in New York just to get an Instacart or an Amazon Fresh delivery slot for the next day or within 2 days. So I think that's leveled out a little bit, which is good. But Mark, your point about the Amazon customer experience raising the floor for all of the clicks and mortar and or pure e-commerce companies, absolutely true. So I've been buying most of my, like the technology stuff that I did need to get, like Barry, I picked up a new iPad, 2020 iPad. I was able to get it from B&H Photo, which is one of my favorite retailers, but I use them almost exclusively as a brick and mortar, show up at the store and get my hands on it. And how big is this camera? And is this the actual adapter I need? But they've worked so hard on their e-commerce experience, and they have their own delivery capabilities within the tri-state area. So I can confidently say if they say they've got it, I'm going to have it in 2 days. Whereas Amazon might be fudging it a little bit in terms of availability. So I think those companies that have a combination of confident local presence and confident local inventory, but also a national footprint in terms of their e-commerce work, they're going to do well. And they're the ones that build a specialty and clear customer service stories to tell. Crutchfield has had this for years with audio. B&H has it with the pro and prosumer video and technology market. There's lots of these companies. They still can compete. The question is, what is their actual physical footprint going to look like? In Brooklyn, we have a Micro Center. It's one of my favorite places to go. But I don't really want to spend time walking around there right now. However, if I say to them, do you have, this piece of equipment in stock? And they say, yes, we're putting it on the shelf for you. I know I can drive over there and, if I get there in 20 minutes, they'll have it out front for me in 20 minutes. Amazon can't quite do that yet. And not sure when or if they ever will be able to, without the sort of Prime Now, hyper expensive version of their experience.
Well, about Amazon here in San Jose, they do have 2-hour or delivery on some things and sort of normal times. And yesterday, just case study, I was looking to buy some 2-foot Ethernet cables just to want to rearrange the office and just deal away with a lot of just cable clutter. And Amazon was saying, oh, we could deliver tomorrow on Friday if you order within the next 11 hours. Went back about 2 hours later, and the delivery day had slipped to Saturday. So I guess that's just a sign of how busy they are and how good a control they have over their logistics, that they can real time react to scheduling and delivery ships. But I think wherever you're right, Mike. I think density is the key point. And we have a second home in the central coast of California, and down there, Amazon doesn't have its delivery service. It works through UPS and the local post office. So Amazon is not quite the same experience, all across the country. So I think people are probably jealous that you can get same day turnaround or 2-hour delivery if you order something from Whole Foods if you're in one of the coasts.
MacVoices is supported by MacPaw, the maker of Clean My Mac X. Save 5% off at macpaw.com/podcast. Like me, I'm sure you're glad that you are a Mac user. We don't have to worry nearly as much as users of that other platform about complications with our operating systems. But that doesn't mean we're completely free of our computers needing a little maintenance and a tune-up occasionally. And that's where Clean My Mac X comes in. Clean My Mac X declutters your Mac. Things like old cache files, old log files, old email attachments all get left behind during normal use, taking up valuable drive space. Clean My Mac X finds them, lets you see what they are, then helps you delete them easily. It won't get rid of anything you don't want it to. And if you've ever opened Activity Monitor, you know it can be a great place to see what your Mac is doing, but it can be a little difficult to understand. Clean My Mac X helps you with a much more straightforward interface to help you optimize your Mac. All that and more can be yours when you visit macpaw.com/podcast to download Clean My Mac X today and use the code MacVoices to receive 5% off. Upon visiting macpaw.com/podcast, click the Buy Now button, then scroll to the bottom of your screen and enter the code before completing your purchase. Clean My Mac X is also available in the Apple App Store. That's Clean My Mac X from MacPaw at macpaw.com/podcast. Give it a try and clean up your Mac. Thanks to MacPaw for their support of MacVoices. Barry, do you perceive Amazon Prime to be hyper expensive, like Mike just said?
No, I think partially because I do try to take advantage of the spectrum, and I've probably been Prime since they first came out with it because free 2-day shipping, great. And then they would add on to it, whether it was, the movies or some of these other services. And I find it worth the while. Now, I do order quite a lot, so I think there's still the shipping mentality that I have, which is the value. But with a lot of us spending more time at home, I'm not a big TV guy, but I've definitely spent more time watching things. I think that really helped elevate them, and actually helped, probably this is the rising tide, right? All of them became stronger. That I was watching Apple TV. I was watching Disney Plus for a bit, CBS All Access. So everybody got some taste, which I thought, good timing for some of that. But I think Amazon's got a really strong library. Them and Netflix really seem to be up here. I'd be curious to see where some of these other services like HBO, now they've got, I think it's HBO Max. So we'll see. And timing wise, I think a lot of traditional TV is just shifting away, and special programs that are finite in length, I think, are going to find themselves more often created, right? And I think that's what I'm seeing in this general time is the adaptability, the creativity of people to try new things. Let's see how this works. Or sometimes they got lucky. ESPN, they put out the Michael Jordan special with The Last Dance. Now, Chicago guy, very close, near and dear to my heart. But I wouldn't have normally cared about that. But I sat down and watched it because I had some more free time at home. And I thought, darn it, this is good. And then I started looking at the producer. He's made some other shows. And that's where my chain went. So I think that's some of the differences that I see. Back to your Amazon question, Chuck. Yeah, I think it's a good deal. It's not for everybody. If you're a very casual orderer, or if, Mark, you mentioned you had the Central California location, if that's where you lived all the time, probably wouldn't be your thing.
Yeah, and Mike, go ahead, Mike. I'll let you.
I was gonna clarify what absolutely Amazon Prime. Like Barry, I've been a longtime member. What I was talking about was Prime Now, which is their 2-hour same day delivery service, which does have sometimes additional fees associated with it.
Right.
So that and the Whole Foods grocery delivery, the Amazon Fresh, Prime Now, things that don't fit into those categories. Like there's a lot of options if you live in a zip code where that service is available. But it does start to add up versus if I can wait a day or 2 days for non-perishables or for something that I'm ordering that isn't consumable food or medicine, then it comes down to that customer experience. And like you said, Chuck, the ease of I got the wrong thing, I need to send it back. It definitely is noticeable. You also see these stories on social media or from friends who said, I asked for, one pineapple and I got a crate of pineapples, or, I was expecting a dozen eggs and I got a dozen cartons of eggs. So there's still some stuff to work out, but we'll get there.
So what if you said, Alexa, send me 100 rolls of toilet paper? Is Alexa going to be able to satisfy that?
Oh, who knows? She's very resourceful, but
Well, she'd be like Siri and give you a sarcastic comeback.
Well, given that you just told everybody to order 100 rolls of toilet paper, Mark, I think we're going to put it to the
Now
test.
you've just created the
We
second
say-
wave of problems.
Yeah,
Thanks.
We
yeah.
say a lady. We always say a lady or G lady, and that way we don't have this problem.
I know, but I'm a rule breaker.
Yeah. So the new toilet paper shortage is now Mark's fault.
Okay. So I have a little Star Trek-y thing just looking out into the future about maybe trends we might see catalyzed by this. And I'm thinking, maybe increase robotics, both, at delivery. And I think, there's trials all over the country that people have seen about either not flying drones, but sort of wheel-based robots delivering food or other stuff, as well as there's a company down in Southern California that's been working on a burger flipping robot that can solve a lot of that can perform a lot of the common cook tasks in fast food type of restaurants. So I'm thinking that as if social distancing is here forever, or however long it is until there's a vaccine, that you'll see just continued acceleration, replacement of labor in some of these restaurants, just because robots don't get viruses and they don't care how dense they are. Whereas it can really put quite a crimp in some of the workflow if you need to have humans who have to have masks and special ventilation systems added for protection, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So I'm thinking we may start to see some of these things become more widely available than as a result of this pandemic. What do you guys all think?
I think it's inevitable. I mean, I think we're seeing it in supermarkets. We're seeing it. We're going to see it first in those controlled environments or controlled contexts where the robots don't have to make complex sort of trolley problem decisions about where to go and what to do, and where there's a lot of human supervision to come in and override or rescue a robot that's gotten stuck, and sort of the continuation of the self-checkout lanes at the supermarket. Now it's going to be stand in the parking lot, and my personal robot is going to go and find the things on the shelves for me and then put them in my cart and bring them out to me. But that's all a private environment. There's a town in Britain which is called Milton Keynes. I was just looking it up, where conveniently enough in 2018 there was a startup that went out there and started deploying these grocery robots that look like Roombas, just tall Roombas. And this town, because it happens to have bicycle paths that are pre-designed, it's perfect for delivery robots. It's just the right place for them to try it. So they've had a 2-year pilot running in this town. Well, guess what? Now it's not a pilot anymore. They need those robots to deliver groceries in this town. I think over time we're going to see them getting out into less and less predictable and less controlled environments. And honestly, some of the self-driving technology, more than one of the self-driving companies that's out there right now, is not going to make it to a product, is not going to make it from a safety perspective or from a funding perspective to actually delivering a car that drives itself. But there's no reason that code and that IP can't be pulled into a golf cart sized robot that doesn't carry you but is purely for cargo and is going to go out and do your shopping for you.
So we'll be delivering toilet paper for the next 28 years.
Exactly. And it'll be perfectly happy doing that.
Yes.
Yeah. Guys, before we run out of time, there's one other issue or two that are sort of tied together in my mind. I've been doing some ordering of food, and I'm not a big delivery guy, so I will go and pick it up. And the major chains have been they've been okay with this, but I feel like that the ordering process, that the online experience, both desktop, laptop based, and iOS based, still is kind of wanting. It's taking too many steps. There's too much information that needs to be done, And worse, in my opinion, unless I'm going to give them my credit card and let them hold the number, which I really don't like, I don't see the contactless payment, i.e. Apple Pay or something of that nature, where I can identify with my thumb or my face or whatever, being implemented. And I think this is something these operations have got to do if they want to be competitive, because if I know the other night I had a situation where I wanted to order from restaurant A, and I got so frustrated with their app and the responsiveness of their app. And it wasn't like it was, dinner time on Friday night when you would expect it to be crushed, that I just said, you know what, I'm going to restaurant B. And I used their situation, their solution, which was still not great, but it was better, and it got the order done. And I'm looking at this and I'm thinking, okay, everybody needs to start to rethink their online presences, especially if they're going to do any kind of e-commerce online on more of a transactional basis. And is anybody else seeing that?
Yeah, there's two scenarios that came up when you mentioned that, Chuck. One is when I had my first Uber experience, I was blown away at how accurate and available they were. And this goes back a while. And it wasn't downtown Chicago. This was out in the burbs on a snowy night. And I was like, there's no way that there's going to be an Uber. And I was at a train station. Anyway, to have that map and show me exactly where the person was, and that person contacted me, says, hey, I just arrived at the station. I'm about a 2-minute walk from where you're at. That experience made me hooked on that whole process. Now, politics aside, and it's another story with Uber, but it showed me the options that, if it's implemented well, can really grab me. And I did notice this as well with some of the local restaurant ordering apps here in Chicago, that they're geotagging the driver. So I know exactly when my food's coming, and it warns me and sends a notification. Your food will be delivered in the next 2 minutes. Great. Lock up my cats so they don't scoot out the door. And that experience is what I needed. And it was super easy, and I never felt like, well, is my food going to be 5 minutes, 10 minutes, or an hour? The other thing is, and I'm sure there are others doing this, but I noticed it through Panera. Panera's offering a fair amount of groceries now, at least here in the Chicago area. I'm like, huh. And they have the infrastructure, Chuck, like what you're saying. It's super easy to order. Their customer service has always been spot on. Oh, but now if I need some milk or bread or other common dairy products, they're all there. I'm like, oh, this is smart. So I'm thinking some companies like that will pivot because they make the ordering experience. Now, they do keep my credit card, but it's actually, no, I think they're Apple Pay. So yeah, they've already got what I want. So it's secure and quick. So that's, again, the opportunity that's out there for a lot of companies.
Mike, what's your experience? Again, I'm pointing to you in New York City because the dynamics of New York City are so different than the rest of us.
Well, I mean, I think there is a trade-off between convenience and aggravation, or convenience and security. And I take your point about not wanting to leave your credit card number on file with 20 different restaurants or delivery companies. We do have the option now with things like privacy.com or different bank offerings to do virtual credit cards. You can do that with, I believe, with the Apple Card as well. So you can do a little bit of firewalling for that if it's driving you nuts. Could do things like Cash App or Venmo or PayPal. And I'm seeing more restaurants accept these services. But fundamentally, you're right, which is that the customer experience for app-based delivery and app-based food is not always great. It's important to note that Grubhub /Seamless /Uber Eats and Big Delivery is doing a real number on a lot of these independent restaurants in terms of fees and preventing customers from getting that to them directly. So if you can, you should always check the website and a reliable phone number for the restaurant and try to order directly from them. One exception I'll highlight is Slice, which is the pizza delivery app, which philosophically and operationally makes a point of giving those independent restaurants as big a slice of the pie, no pun intended, as they possibly can. But it does come down to customer experience. And if you're not able to pay the way you want, interact, in a touch-free manner, and get get what you need quickly and efficiently, you are going to go someplace that is more frictionless, that is giving you less aggravation. So yeah, the payment methods and where does that get stored? That's a big gotcha for a lot of folks.
Mark,
Yeah,
I'll give you the last word on this.
Okay, I would think that Chuck, just listening to it, it sounds like this is a little bit of legacy, legacy code, so to speak, that the restaurants are not used to fulfilling orders that come in electronically. But I think as a result of this giant kick in the pants called COVID-19, they're going to have to rethink their business models and sort of even until just as recently as a couple of years ago, it was annoying the number of restaurants who have websites that were built using Flash. I mean, just
it's just like the pain right here.
Yeah.
Oh, that's horrible.
10 years after Steve Jobs and the iPhone killed Flash, it's still was on a lot of legacy sites. So unfortunately, it's just going to have to be a brutal capitalism and survival of the fittest, and they will emerge. And companies have done in retail. If you look at Target, has done a good example. Walmart, Home Depot have done a good example of integrating the web. Something like Kohl's is partnered with Amazon as a return center, as a traffic driver for people into their stores. So all I would ask is, in your example, did you call back or notify Restaurant A that they were your preferred vendor, but they blew it and lost the order and then tell them Restaurant B just because they had a horrible order experience? That's probably the only thing you can do to help accelerate that restaurant seeing the light and becoming more responsive.
That's a very fair point, Mark. And no, I did not do either one. And maybe I should have. But I have to admit, I just didn't think about it because I guess maybe of course I was hungry, but I was being a little self-centered. It's like, okay, if you can't fulfill my need here, I'm going to go to somebody who can. And that may be the best bottom line to put on a lot of these discussions is going forward. And probably was the bottom line before COVID-19, but it just feels like a bigger one now from a technology standpoint, that if you're not going to be able to do it or do it well, then sorry for the pun, but you're going to have your lunch eaten by somebody else.
Yep.
So, guys, this is exactly the kind of conversation I wanted to have, and I really, really appreciate you all taking the time to do it because I knew we'd have some good insights and some good discussions over this. But before we go, I want to make sure that folks know where they can find you, so if they want to question you or agree or disagree with you, they know where to do it. So I'll try to keep the same order, I think, because my screen has rearranged a few times. Barry, where can folks find you?
So on Twitter is easy, Fulkb, Fulkb on Twitter. You can also just, generally find me all over. Still have a presence on for Mac Eyes Only, although Mike Potter hasn't put out a podcast in a while, I still keep in contact with him. And, if I may put in a virtual plug, he's doing virtual Mac Stock this year. Really looking forward to seeing how that's working. In talking with him, he's been super excited in trying to make this happen. So best wishes to Mike and looking forward to seeing how that, and I think that's July 25th and 26th.
Great. Good to see you. Thanks for being here.
Thanks, Chuck.
Mike, I'm always glad to corral you. Where can folks find you?
They can find me also on Twitter at Mike T. Rose. And you can find me on the podcast that I do with Ms. Kelly Guimont, friend to all, enemy to none. Kelly and I do a show called The After Show, which is at aftershowpodcast.com. And as we were talking about before the show, you can find me on some recent episodes of Ken Ray's In a Few Minutes, where Barry was also a featured guest. Not I think the week before I was on, or 2 weeks before I was on, somewhere
2 weeks,
in there. 2 weeks. So if you're not listening to that show and you're familiar only with Ken from his macOS Ken show, you can check out a very different flavor of his podcasting voice on In a Few Minutes.
I would agree with that plug. Thanks so much for being here, Mike. Good to see you.
Good to be here.
Mr. Fuccio, the man who now has taken off his hat.
I'm taking it off to you, Chuck.
Very nicely done. So where can folks find you?
They can find me on Twitter at Mark Fuccio or through LinkedIn. And voila.
Excellent. Thank you, sir.
Great discussion. Thank you for this invitation.
Yes. Folks, I'm Chuck Joyner. This is MacVoices. One more time, just a technical note. We won't know exactly how the video turned out until after we turn the video recording off. If it's a little rough, sorry about that. I guess we'll blame COVID-19 for it. This has been one of those shows that I hope makes you think a little bit, makes you evaluate. Maybe you want to take it into your boss and listen to it together, or take it into your team and listen together, and let it be a conversation starter or a discussion starter about what you need to do should this situation continue, or even if we go back to a more pre-COVID-19 normal. I still think there's some lessons to be learned here. So until the next time, and as always, thanks for watching. Visit MacVoices.com for show notes and to connect with Chuck on social media. Get involved in our Facebook group or like our Facebook page, and get more out of your Apple tech with MacVoices Magazine, free on Flipboard and on the web. And if you find value in it all, consider supporting us through either our Patreon campaign at patreon.com/MacVoices, or by making a one-time donation via the PayPal link on our front page and in the show notes of each episode. You will join these fine people who help bring you MacVoices. Advertising handled by Backbeat Media at backbeatmedia.com. Bandwidth provided by CashFly at cashfly.com.